representing the Democratic Party of Broome County Legislator Kim Myers. Kim? Next to Kim is representing the Upstate Jobs Party, will follow businessman Mark Babin. And the Republican candidate, 101st District Assemblywoman Claudia Tennant.
It's not church, it's just
No problem, John. No problem. It's actually your show, John, so that's fine. In the interest of fairness, because there are some advantages to going first or last or in the middle, we drew names out of a hat to see who would go first for the opening statement, and did the same thing for the closing statement. So tonight, we will begin our opening statement portion with Kim Myers. Kim?
Thank you, and I'm going to take that as an advantage to be able to go first, so thank you very much for that. I appreciate everybody coming here. An informed electorate is the best electorate that you can have, so I thank you all for taking the time to come here tonight. My name is Kim Myers, and I'm running for Congress for the New York 22nd, and I couldn't be more humbled and proud for that opportunity. I was born and raised in Broome County, which is down to the south, in Binghamton, New York. I've lived there my whole life. I chose to live there and chose to stay there. I was born and raised in a family business that my dad started with $300 that he borrowed from his grandmother that she literally had stored in her cookie jar. And he opened a bait and tackle shop. My 5 siblings and I worked in that business our whole life because that's what we did. And it taught me everything that I am today. It taught me about commitment, it taught me about integrity, it taught me about hard work, and it taught me about giving back to your community and being responsible. Along about the 80s, when my dad's health started to fail, my siblings and I bought that business from my dad when there was only 2 stores. My brother's leadership and his vision and hard work by all of us, it's now grown to be what's known as Dick's Clothing and Sporting Goods, and we have 750 stores across the nation, and we employ 37,000 people. I'm going to use the word simultaneously a lot. So I went to Portland State University for a degree in education and came back to work in the business and, oh geez, I'm not doing this, okay. And started growing our family. I was a small business owner. We have 6 kids. The oldest is 35, the youngest is 8, and I've been on the Vestal Board of Education for 18 years, 8 of those as president as of last year, and as stated, I'm currently a Broome County legislator and the minority leader. I'm running for Congress because I decided I either had to stop screaming at the television set or I had to do something about it. Thank you.
Claudia Tennant, you're next.
Thank you. I probably don't really need to introduce myself too much to this crowd, but as you know, I'm a member of the State Assembly in the 101st Assembly District. From New Hartford, I grew up in the house across the street from where I live right now. I'm running for Congress because there's 3 main issues that I want to talk about. First is the economy. As a small business owner, my family business was started in 1936 in Binghamton. As a Beaver corporation, 7 years later today, we are still a Beaver corporation, paying taxes and all taxes. So taxes and regulations are a huge issue in the economy, and so is trade. And it's an issue that we're talking
Your
about.
mic is not on, it's something. Yeah. Claudia, we can't hear you. Just go loud.
Oh, okay. How's that? Thank you. Yeah, so, okay. Thank you. Sorry, Larry. The second issue I think is really important to our communities is security, and that has to deal with our borders and what's happening within our borders. And the thing is, and I think one of the more important issues is corruption. And as a member of the State Assembly, I've been able to witness firsthand, watching members of this State Assembly and the Senate literally marched out in handcuffs because of the corruption in Albany. And it's something I've been fighting, and as the first person, elected official, or anyone I know to call for the resignation of corrupt Speaker Sheldon Silver back in 2012, that was years before Preet got to him. I've been willing to stand up to corruption. I've called out members in both parties, and I think it's something that we need to deal with, not just in Albany, because we have the same type of corruption and the same type of cronyism in D.C. And I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to take that fight to D.C. And that's one of the main reasons I'm running
Mr. Bennett.
Thank you. For me, this is really special to be at my alma mater, Brooklyn County. Appreciate hosting this event, as well as the Chamber of Commerce for putting it together, and for WKTV and getting the word out. Actually have this turnout, but most of all, the audience here. Thank you for taking time to understand what these candidates have to offer. For me, I'm running for Congress for one reason, and that is that I believe we wave goodbye to too many of our children as they move away from upstate New York. In search of opportunities, they don't find enough right here. And I think we can change that. My background, as many of you know, I grew up in Little Falls, just 5 miles away from here. And after going to school there, I grew in Herkimer, moved on to met my wife, Krista, who's in the front row. We've been married 36 years. And we traveled around the world together as we AV Exchanges, which operates the post exchanges of retail stores. Then had the opportunity with the last assignment with AV Exchanges, being in Silicon Valley, where I started a company that has a large company listed on New York Stock Exchange, helping small businesses with all of their headaches of being. So the reason I'm running for Congress is over these last 6 years, after I moved my family from Silicon Valley back to Little Falls, I've been very involved in helping the next generation start companies, because that's my belief is the best way for us to create jobs. Jobs are not created by the government, they're created by entrepreneurs. I want to serve my country, give back for all that I've been fortunate to receive. And quite frankly, I'm frustrated with the bickering that goes on between the two major parties, and there is much that I can do as an independent in bringing the parties closer together so that we can get some more things done in Washington.
All right, thank you, candidates. Time now for our first question, and this will be posed to Kim Myers, followed by Mr. Babinick, and then Claudia Tenney. The question: if you win, you will be a freshman congressional representative. While each of you have stated that you're not Washington insiders, how much influence do you believe you will have on effectively legislating for the good of the 22nd District? Won't some alliances be necessary to get work accomplished?
Thank you for that. And that is a good question. As someone who has never done this before, been in Congress, I think that that's an advantage because I don't have anything to, I'm not beholden to anybody, and you go to Congress with the right idea in mind. And my idea is that I was elected by the 22nd District. That's who I would serve, and that's who I would be beholden to. I understand that they're told me that you have to kowtow to this or you have to do that. I really believe that the electorate is fed up and is shown by the number of you that are here today that people want change and they want to elect people who are not going to do that. They're not going to be beholden to a particular party or to a particular ideology. That's what I plan on doing when I go to Congress, and I am convinced that there are many people throughout the country, just like myself, that are being elected, that will go to Congress and will go to the table and say, I really don't care if it's a Republican idea or if it's a Democratic idea. If it's a good idea, get to the table and hammer this out, because I think the message has been sent. If you don't, you're going to be unelected. I'm not there to stay forever, and I know that there are people that have been there for a very long time. Some of them will be unelected. Those that are there and have their career there, I think the writing is on the wall for them as well. I think that they will see we have to work together or you're going to be back home and somebody else is going to be taking your place. So that's what I intend to do. I'm not beholden to anybody. I've an example as far as a legislator and as a school board member, how I can think for myself. I look at all the ideas, I look at all the consequences, and I look at it from all sides before I make a decision. And the decision is always what's in the best interest of the people that you serve. Thank you.
Mr. Babin.
Alliances are necessary to get things done when it comes to policy. And policy means not just the votes that are cast and legislation that someone might try to sponsor. I would say that the role of a congressperson is actually more than just policy. The other two pillars that I would think are very important include constituent service. Having a congressman that understands the needs of both individuals and of businesses who sometimes have to navigate through this maze of federal bureaucracy, providing good constituent service is something that is critically important for the congressional role. But the third pillar is leadership. And leadership to me means getting things done. No matter what party you're in, and especially for me as an independent, I have that opportunity to forge alliances with whoever is going to help me bring about the change that I believe needs to be done, not only through policy, but right here in the district. As a leader who has brought people together with especially helping that next generation of entrepreneur in the newer industries right here, there are many opportunities to put leadership to work. With the role of congressman, I would have the opportunity to convene people, colleges, our economic development organizations, our business community. There are a lot of resources here that have the right intent, but don't have a convening force that brings them together to solve these issues around creating jobs. That's what I know how to do. That's what I've been doing for the last 6 years with my nonprofit, Upstate Venture Connect, and that's what I will do for you as Congressman.
Assemblywoman Tennant.
Thank you. I think the key word is, I always hear about, we need to have someone go to Congress who's going to be there a long time so they can long in seniority and get something, so they can get things done. I haven't been really impressed with what Congress has been getting done so far, but I think leadership means something else. I think leadership means standing up for your constituents, the Constitution of the United States, and upholding your oath, and also actually working with the other people on the other side of the aisle to get legislation passed that isn't going to force us to compromise our beliefs. As someone who's worked in the state assembly with a 107 to 42, that's 107 Democrats to 42 Republicans. Those aren't good odds. But nonetheless, in the last 6 years in the state assembly, I've been fighting corruption, but I've also managed to get over 60 pieces of legislation passed. Some are more substantive than others, and I've sponsored numerous other bills that have come along. This is because we have to do that in the assembly, but we have to make common sense. And we also have to stand up for things that aren't right. And it's something I have not been afraid to do, and it's something I've done as a business person. As many of you may or may not know, my family owned Penny Saver for many years here. We also own the New York Press, which has been around for 70 years. Our business has been suffering under many burdensome regulations. One of them is Obamacare. It's hurt us and devastated our small business community. Many of our family farms have been devastated. So that's the kind of thing that we need to stand up is for our constituents. And as someone who is the quintessential outsider, as someone who has faced competition from both parties in the establishment in every race I've ever run for the state assembly, and who has been redistricted into the longest assembly district in the history of New York State, which was calculated to eliminate me, I'm still here because the constituents know that my mission is to tell the truth and to lead us out of the mess that we're in with this federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, we'll start with Mr. Babinick. Multiple mass shootings across the country this year, even as recently as this past weekend, the Second Amendment is coming under fire. Where do you draw the balance between the right to bear arms for responsible citizens, the limiting of access to guns and ammunition to irresponsible citizens, and would you be prepared to make a decision that may enhance the safety of Americans yet not be favorable to this county's largest employer? Mr. Babinick.
Second Amendment is something that I'm absolutely 100% committed to. And anytime we start looking at changes that affect what even the Supreme Court has determined in the Heller decision, that every individual in this country is entitled to own a firearm, that's something that I will not compromise on. Now, are there things that can be done to avoid having firearms fall in the hands of people who are criminals? Those are things that can be looked at, and each individual piece of legislation will have to be looked at on its face. But in general, I'm 100% committed to the Second Amendment, as well as the opportunity to support Remington Arms, which is this district's largest employer, at least Kirkland County's largest employer. one that has been a fabric of our community for multiple generations. It is a shame that the SAFE Act has pushed Remington Arms in the direction that is a situation that is very untenable for them as a company, and anything we can do to keep those jobs and Remington Arms here is something I'm equally committed to and would fight for as your congressman.
Assemblywoman Tenney, you're next.
Thank you. It is one thing to talk about supporting the Second Amendment. It's another thing to have a record of fighting to protect our Second Amendment rights. As a member of the State Assembly, I was delighted to bring over 75 Remington Arms employees to the Capitol on Monday, the day that the Senate started passing it. We fought hard. We split up into groups and we tried to figure out which legislators would vote yes. Sadly, that legislation was rushed through by a governor who is just as unlawful as our president, who felt they need to take a shot at our Second Amendment rights. I support the Second Amendment. I have a rating from NRA. I'm endorsed in this race by NRA, New York State Rifle and Pistol, and every other major gun group. I support our responsible gun owners. I do not think many of the legislation that has come through that is trying to restrict Second Amendment rights is reasonable in many ways. I'm not against keeping guns out of the hands of people that shouldn't have them, but our biggest problem in this country is illegal gun ownership. And it's the failure of many prosecutors to go in and not prosecute gun crimes. That's the first thing that gets negotiated. But I know that we have a prosecutor who's in our county right now who does prosecute gun crimes, and that's important. And there are many ways to look at the Second Amendment as people think that it's, for example, our president feels that we need to control guns, and so does Hillary Clinton. I just don't support those views. I think that we need to continue to stand for our Second Amendment. And not only, one other thing I want to add is the SAFE Act, and by the way, I'm the first person to introduce full repeal legislation of the SAFE Act. I will sponsor anything that will chip away at the illegal aspects of the SAFE Act. But one thing that's really important about it is the SAFE Act isn't the only reason that our small business community and businesses like Remington Arms are threatened. It's because we are one of the most unfriendly business environments in the entire nation here in New York State. It's regulations, it's the forcing through of bills like microstamping that have it could potentially hurt Remington Arms, that are going to hurt this community. Regulations and taxes are the biggest reason that are chasing our businesses out of here, along with bad trade deals. Thank you.
Myers?
Thank you. I couldn't agree more that the Second Amendment, needs to be protected. As somebody who grew up in a family business that is probably currently the largest seller of guns and ammunition, I know what responsible gun ownership is. I've lived it my whole life long. We've sold them, and we have friends who were customers, lifelong customers. I know what responsible gun ownership is. Recent shootings are becoming all too familiar. We're almost getting desensitized to them. And as my colleagues have said, nobody talks about that the Supreme Court has already ruled on the Second Amendment. It is the Heller decision that says, yes, you do have the right to bear arms. I don't really think that I've heard anybody say that they're seriously considering repealing the Second Amendment, and I would oppose that vehemently. But yes, Remington Arms is the largest employer in this area, and I am very, very intimately familiar with that yellow and green box. During hunting season in our business, I sold many of those, and truth be told, sometimes when the competition we had a price war, my father would grab cash out of the cash register and send us kids over to buy all the shotgun shells up in a competitor. But it was a sight to see a 15 or 16-year-old. Laws were different back then, walking out of a competitor with a whole case under your arm. But again, we need to look at what we are doing in this country. It doesn't make any sense for somebody who's on the no-fly list for terrorist activity to be able to buy a gun. It doesn't make any sense for somebody that's criminally, mentally ill to be able to buy a gun. And universal background checks are applauded and even endorsed by most of our citizens. My neighbor across the street's name is Marty. He is the biggest NRA member that you will ever see. When I told him I was running for Congress, I said, Marty, I need your support. And he said, honey, I love you, but next to my wife and my children, the most important thing to me is that Second Amendment. And I said, let's talk about it. He came over, we talked about it. He's one of my biggest supporters. Thank you.
Thank you. Third question, we'll start with Assemblywoman Tenney. Herkimer County is a county that skews older in population, so the cost of health care is a big concern for residents and businesses alike. The Affordable Care Act is now a reality. What changes would you propose to our health care system that would be both beneficial to business while minimizing the reduction of available health services to your constituents? And is that possible?
Yes, it is possible. In fact, the ability to, I think that we should completely repeal the Affordable Care Act, and we've had many opportunities to defund it as members of Congress, but our current resident in Congress chose not to do that, and many others did not follow suit. I can tell you right now, as a small business owner, the most devastating job loss that we've incurred is due to the burdensome regulation caused by the Affordable Care Act. And I might add that my opponent, Martin Babinek, his company has profited off of the Affordable Care Act, and he's even bragged about it in a tweet where he said, as bad as overregulation is for the U.S. economy, and referring to Obamacare, it sure is a never-ending force fueling Trinet's growth. And the idea that somebody says that they're going to come here and be a job creator for our small business community and actually profit off of Obamacare, I think is not a good sign for our community as someone who claims to be a job creator. I would give us an opportunity to have a consumer-driven model, and of course we would definitely cover anyone with any pre-existing conditions. That was already something we were moving in that direction to do. But we need to reduce the cost of health care and provide a quality health care package for our employees. Right now what we have is everyone has insurance, but everybody doesn't have their doctor. Everybody can't afford to go to the doctor because the insurance rates are so high. In New York State, the state Senate refused to adopt the healthcare exchanges, so the governor did it by executive order. That's left us with imploding healthcare exchanges and very high rates. And our company alone is going up between 17 and 19% in the cost of Obamacare this year. We need to find a consumer-driven model, whether we want to find ability for deductions and taxes or for individuals who need to get health care. There has to be a better way, and this way is certainly not helping our small business community. And that is critically important because 70% of the new jobs in this nation are created by small businesses, not by big giants that we lure in with taxpayer money. Thank you.
Mr. Babbitt, why don't you go next?
Before I comment about Obamacare, which was your question, I can't help but respond to the assertion made by my opponent, Ms. Denny. The fact is that when it comes to Obamacare, I did spend about 2 years advocating against the passage of what I knew was going to be a train wreck with what we call today Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And I represented the interests of small businesses in doing that. Because it's not only the fact that the construct for Obamacare has not brought down healthcare costs, but the mountain of regulations that small businesses are faced with has made it completely untenable. And I'm proud of saying that when I think of my business, my company is Trinet, and is in the business of helping small companies navigate through the headaches of being an employer. Obamacare has been one big headache. If it was up to me, we wouldn't have it. I would truly like to repeal it. But if I can help small businesses navigate through that, I feel good about that. Now, here's what I'll do if I had my choice. I would absolutely like the opportunity for individuals to purchase insurance across state lines. One of the things that creates these high costs in insurance is that individual states put together policies that are oftentimes influenced by special interests. Those policy requirements in state laws end up beefing up what is oftentimes more coverage than individuals need, and we don't have that flexibility across state lines. I'm a believer in having minimum standards as opposed to high standards that are in regulations, and also to put more emphasis on how we might get fewer people on Medicaid, which is another part of the healthcare equation, and one that's very costly to our taxpayers, especially property taxpayers. Art?
Thank you. The Affordable Health Care Act is certainly a hot button topic. It has tried to be voted out in Congress so many times that nobody can even actually remember how many times it has been voted on. So what do you do about that? It's here to stay, and you take, in my opinion, you get together and you say what is working with it, what's not working with it. Yes, some of the premiums are too high, but as a matter of fact, nobody wants to talk about the number of people who have benefited from it. 10% of New Yorkers, 2.1 million people are now covered. And here in Herkimer County alone, 9% of people, 5,800 people have now enrolled in private health care insurance. So we have to stop saying how much we hate this, why it's wrong, and there are a lot of problems with it. You won't get me to say anything different. But how are we going to fix it? I do believe passionately that every person in the United States should have quality, affordable health care. And how are we going to accomplish that? Not by bickering and pointing the finger and what's wrong and what's this, by getting together and making it happen. So there are some unintended consequences of the Affordable Health Care Act. One of them, and my solution to it is all solutions, is get the right people at the table. You need to find out when you roll this downhill, what are some of the consequences that you may not have intended. For example, our public school teachers, they have good health insurance. Did the Affordable Health Care Act really intend for that to be considered a Cadillac plan, and that public school districts who can't afford it another dime be hit with a multi-million-dollar fine or tax for that? I don't think so. So the solution is get to the table, both sides, stop arguing, what's working, how can we fix it, and make it work so that everybody has affordable, quality health care in this country.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you for giving me a moment to rebut. This campaign is about honesty and about being who you are. I have a major hypocrisy alert. Mr. Babinec says he fought against Obamacare. The record reveals otherwise. He is a maxed out donor to a man named Scott Murphy, who was held office in the 20th Congressional District. He was facing a re-election, and his number one donor, one of his largest donors and number one volunteer, was Martin Babinec. And the records show that. Maxed out donations to Scott Murphy. And what's Scott Murphy's claim to fame? He was the critically important vote that they needed to get Obamacare passed. And that's why Chris Gibson, who is the occupant of that current seat, which is now NY19, used to be NY20, was able to defeat Scott Murphy. But it was not because of Martin Babinec's opposition to Obamacare. It was his very support of it, and his support of Hillary Clinton, who supports single payer at the time. Huge donations to Hillary Clinton, Scott Murphy, numerous Democrats, including Governor Cuomo.
Wow. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to set the record straight here. This is what we expect from a career politician. Attack. All right.
The truth. It's the truth.
Well, let me share a little insight that maybe goes beyond the obvious if anybody wanted to take a few minutes to take a look. Scott Murphy is a guy who was a venture capitalist that was investing in upstate New York to create more jobs. That's the reason I backed him. So was he a Democrat? Absolutely. I felt good about backing him. And you also know that Scott Murphy, when the vote was first taken, voted against Obamacare. And I was right on his side, urging him to vote no. Anyone that checked with him would tell him, he would acknowledge that. The fact is, when he flipped his vote to vote in favor of it, it's one of the reasons that I got so upset, because it was all about special interest funding. That special interest funding, which became so corruptive, caused a man who I had great respect for to then go in a different direction, and it's a reason I'm running as an independent, denying any opportunity. I will not take any funding from special interests like either of my opponents are being funded with special interest contributions, because this is a corruptive influence in Washington, and I'm afraid to say that Scott Murphy was an example of the wrong way, not what I expected when I first supported it.
Mrs. Myers, do you want to weigh in, or are you ready for question 4?
I'm ready for question 4. Let's move on.
All right. Well, we talked about health care, but what else do you see as the single biggest deterrent to job growth in the 22nd District? And what will be your role as one of 435 members of Congress to make headway on breaking down that deterrent?
Well, one of the reasons that we have stagnant job growth clearly is that we do not have a very business-friendly environment. We need to create an environment that is more appealing and inviting to businesses. As someone who was born and raised in Broome County, which was the home of IBM, the home of Endicott Johnson Shoe Company, for me, it's a matter of let's start looking at what we do have, not what we used to have. How can we capitalize on what we do have to create jobs and not be lamenting of what's no longer here? And we have a lot of great things here in upstate New York. One thing that we have is we have great colleges and universities. We have a great brain trust that we can align the curriculum and the majors and programs to what the jobs are of the future. Over in Rome, we have Griffiths Air Force Base and cybersecurity. That is going to be the #1 industry soon, I predict, because that's the biggest threat to the United States is cybersecurity. It's not going to be an invasion, it's cybersecurity. So let's be on the forefront of that, and let's make sure that we have our young people ready for the jobs of the future. In agriculture, and the federal government has banned the growing of the crop called hemp. Hemp, if that was allowed, which it was banned because it looked like marijuana, but I am told you can smoke it all day long and nothing will happen, that could be a cash crop, along with industries that would process that and turn that into products that can go to market. We have a lot of good things here, and we need the federal government to stop over-regulating. You know, we can say New York State too, but this is a federal position we're running for.
Mr. Babbitt.
Creating jobs is the reason I'm running for office. But my jobs plan is very different than what you will hear from politicians. If you think about what our politicians keep saying we should do to create jobs, they talk frequently about business attraction. Like we have to give our tax dollars to some big corporation in order to create jobs. And as we see from the indictments that were handed down just last week, with programs funded by New York State, money that's coming from us, the taxpayers, there is a lot of cronyism where those dollars find their ways to friends of the politicians, people that are making campaign contributions, that end up being an influence on who gets what deal. This is not how we create jobs. My jobs plan is based on how it works in the real world. That is, people that start companies, especially in these new industries, where many of our people graduating from college want to work, they need to get connected to the right resources. Those resources can include investors, it can include team members, it can include the right sources for grants, it covers a wide range of things. But the reason we have people leave here and then go and start companies someplace else is they find it too hard to get connected here in upstate New York with who they need to get connected to. Last 6 years, I've been working full-time on solving that problem through my nonprofit, Upstate